everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on critical components of successful campaigns. I'm Anthony Hale from the marketing team here at GG&A, and we're really excited that you decided to join us today. We're going to get started in a few moments, but before we begin, I just want to go over some technical details. We ask that if you can, please log into WebEx before dialing in. Once you launch the webinar, then you can dial in and associate your phone with your name. If you have any questions during the webinar, please raise your hand, and I will unmute you to ask Carrie or Marty the question. The other way you can ask a question is by typing it in the chat panel on the bottom right side of your screen. Please direct your question to all panelists so that Marty, Carrie, and I can see it and field the question. Any questions that we aren't able to get to during the session will be answered as part of the follow-up transcript that we'll email out to everybody. Also, at the end of the session, we are going to ask everyone to take a short 1-minute survey to let us know what you thought of the webinar, so please stick around for that. Following the session, we'll send out a link of a recording to the session and a transcript to answers to any questions that we didn't get to. If at any point during the webinar you're experiencing technical difficulties, please email me at ahoell@grenzglier.com or call our meeting provider WebEx directly at 866-229-3239. That's 866-229-3239. So with that, I'd like to introduce Carrie Bloomfield, Vice President and Managing Director here at Grenzbach Glier & Associates, and our special guest, Marty Horn, Senior Director of Development and Alumni Relations at the University of Georgia Terry College of Business.
Thank you very much. This is Carrie. Welcome all. We're so delighted so many of you could join us today. Just for a little background, I've been a consultant with Grenzbach Glier for the past 10 years. Before that, I led the advancement programs at Harvard Business School, Smith College, and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. I'm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, but travel widely thanks to my job, which I enjoy a lot. And one of the places I go frequently is Georgia. So with that, let me present Marty Horn, who will tell you a bit about herself.
Thank you, Carrie. As Carrie said, I'm Marty Horn, and I'm the Senior Director of Development and Alumni Relations at the Terry College of Business at the University of Georgia. I have been in this position for 14 years, and I'm also an alum of the University of Georgia's Terry College. I basically provide leadership to the fundraising, alumni relations, and stewardship efforts of the college, and I'm looking forward to telling you all a little bit more about our Building Terry campaign later in the presentation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marty. Now, Anthony, I don't know if we need to talk about either of these technical screens. Would you like to say anything more?
Nope, you can move on to the presentation, Carrie.
Okay, so here we go. Today we're going to give you a broad overview of some key elements to campaign success. Over the years, we at GG&A have found that it really does often boil down to 7 critical elements of successful campaigns. We could spend the next hour, frankly, talking about any one of these, but today's session is, as I said, a broad overview. I will spend a little time at the beginning to talk about best practices, and then I'll introduce Marty to talk about her experience at the University of Georgia. If you have questions as we go along, please do send in a message or raise your hand, as Anthony said. We'll do our best to field them as we go. We also will try to leave adequate time at the end for questions and discussion. So a quick run through first. What are these 7 critical components or key elements? I'll give you a broad overview first, and then I'll drill down a bit on each one of these. First, a compelling case for private gift support, tied to strategic, mission-critical objectives. What do I mean by strategic and mission-critical? Typically, every good case is based on a strategic plan of the organization. It's not just a laundry list of needs. It's based on the institution's vision for the future. Where are you trying to go over the next 5 or 10 or even 20 years? Secondly, a pre-campaign internal development program review and campaign feasibility study are often very helpful to guide campaign preparation and planning. Thirdly, leadership of the institution, able and willing to articulate a compelling vision of the organization's future, to build trust with donors, and to ensure that each and every gift will make a difference over time. Fourthly, dedicated volunteer leaders. We all know how important they are. Not always the easiest to manage, but boy, do they leverage our efforts when they're good ones. Ready to excite others about campaign objectives, excited themselves about them, and ready to invite others to get involved in effective ways. Adequate professional staff who are experienced and proactive in building donor relationships at every level, and an adequate investment in development's internal infrastructure to support campaign's myriad activities, and finally, a sufficient pool of rated, qualified prospective donors. So let's talk a little bit about each one of these. First, a compelling case for support. The cases, we read many, many of them, as you can imagine, going from place to place. And what I've found, the ones that really grab you are the ones that really do talk about the future of the organization. What are these critical objectives that will enable the institution to fulfill its mission at a higher level? What's going to change as a result of this campaign? Why does it matter? Who cares? What difference will it make? Why do it now, not 5 years from now? What's the urgency? What are the key funding priorities based on these mission-critical objectives? How are they linked? What will those funding priorities cost? And how can individual donors make a difference? A good case piques their interest by showing them if you make an investment, you are going to make a dramatic difference in the future of our organization, or whatever the case may be.
Carrie, this is Marty. Let me interject that one of the things that we found while drafting our case is that exercise actually putting those strategic needs and priorities on paper required our academic leadership to articulate their needs to development in a way that we could then, quote-unquote, sell it to our constituents. So that case for support, while all of the things that you mentioned are very, very important, it also really helped us to be able to articulate it in a way that our constituents could understand our needs.
Right, and it also got your faculty involved in the planning process, which was very important. So getting to Marty's point, why bother to have a written case? Sometimes folks say to me, and more often than not is donors or prospective donors saying to me, why do you bother to have a piece of paper? People give to people, not to paper. That is very true, but I strongly believe that by going through the exercise of documenting your case, it keeps fundraising priorities linked to the organization's strategic vision of the future. It provides an important cultivation tool for your prospective donors and a useful leave behind for you to use after you've called on your donors. It ensures that everyone, not just the development staff, but volunteers, other leaders in the institution, others related to your organization, all stay focused on the same goals and objectives over that period of time. I find it provides the best defense against impromptu donor funding suggestions that are not a priority of the organization. I'm sure many of you have encountered donors who have what they feel are brilliant ideas that you just must fund, and you don't want to dash their hopes too badly, but it provides an easy way, a graceful way for you to say, you know, that is a really interesting idea, and I will put it on a list for consideration in the future. But right now, these are our board-approved funding priorities. And by the way, it is important to have your case approved by your board so it has official authority. The case also informs all your public campaign communications, which are such an important part of successful campaigns in their own right. So press releases, other kinds of public communications are all echoing the key messages of the campaign that you're sharing with your donors. A pre-campaign development program review by outside counsel can provide a valuable assessment of internal readiness to support the campaign. Is your staff structured right? How about your volunteer structure? How can you use the one you have already and adapt it for the campaign? Do you have enough staff at all levels and in all functions? I'll get more into that in a moment. GG&A does this, of course, but so do many other firms. But I really have found over the years what a critical difference it makes to my clients. An external feasibility study can test the effectiveness of the draft case for support by asking top prospects to review it and to provide their candid feedback on it. It can give you those key constituents' views of your institution, their readiness to support the campaign, and by testing a possible ask, it can help the institution to determine an ambitious but realistic goal. You can always raise your goal, but it's very hard to lower it. So as you launch your campaign, you want to really have a realistic assessment of what's possible.
Carrie, in my experience, these two are key elements to the success that the Terry College has experienced this far. We began our partnership with GG&A by contracting for this college advancement program review, which was so beneficial as we began to plan our campaign. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about that later in the presentation, but I just want to emphasize that the assessment validated our need for additional staff prior to campaign launch, and it also helped us discover ways to improve internal communication. I just don't believe we would have experienced the level of success we had if we had not done this internal assessment. And additionally, the feasibility study that you all conducted for us provided lots of revealing information regarding a campaign goal, regarding key volunteer leadership for our campaign, as well as how our external constituency felt about our dean, our president, the current staff, and just the overall college. And having an outside consultant conduct these interviews was invaluable because our potential donors will open up to people that they don't know about situations that might not be advantageous or helpful, where they might be a bit more hesitant with someone that they do know and that they work with in the institution.
That's very true. I think it's sometimes startling how much these folks how much prospective donors will tell us as consultants. Is very interesting, and it can be hugely helpful to the institution. Of course, these are confidential conversations. We do not reveal anybody's identity unless they ask us to. But when we aggregate all that information and can provide direct quotes in our final report, it can be very helpful to the institution. Next, in successful campaigns, we find the leadership of the institution plays an absolutely critical role. The CEO, whether that's your president or your headmaster or your head of your hospital or whatever the case may be, he or she needs to be a highly articulate spokesperson for the campaign, able to generate excitement about his or her vision of the future and about the campaign objectives. He or she is able to provide a compelling and concrete examples of how the campaign will transform your organization so donors clearly understand what the impact of their gifts will be. The CEO takes personal responsibility for campaign success in successful campaigns. Often where campaigns stumble, I think, is CEOs sign off on the goals and objectives and say, there you go, development, go do it. Turn on the faucet. We all know that doesn't work. We need them involved. Indeed, up to half of their time needs to be devoted to the campaign, especially during that critical quiet phase, but on through the public phase as well. And he or she works in close collaborative partnership with the head of development. This is very much a team effort, and you need to be on the same page. They need to debrief after their prospect visits. They need to go on prospect visits with you, and so forth.
That's been my experience with my dean. Again, a key to our success is that he does devote at least 50% of his time to our campaign effort. He listens to our advice and acts on it in a timely manner. Timely is key. And in my opinion, having this support from your leadership is just a must in order to be successful.
Yeah, Marty, you are blessed with really a stellar leader who really understands this very well.
Yes.
Not just your CEO, but all the senior leadership of the organization, the deans, the heads of academic departments or medical departments, faculty members, senior administrators, program leaders, all have a successful role to play in successful campaigns. It's an opportunity for you to educate them about what development does and how it benefits them. They can all be articulate and enthusiastic ambassadors and advocates for the campaign as they're talking to constituents of your organization. They can share contacts and open doors for development staff to prospective donors whom they know. If they attend cultivation events, it provides a wonderful opportunity for your prospective donors to talk with them and to learn more about what's going on and to build a relationship. And they accompany development officers on prospect visits when invited to by development. There's nothing like having the head of your cardio unit or department or your key provost to describe the difference this campaign is going to make to their particular area. They're the best spokespeople for those particular funding objectives. And, of course, by making their own campaign gifts, it sends a strong signal that the whole organization is behind the success of this campaign. Volunteer leaders. Dedicated, high-quality volunteer leaders are absolutely key. I learned this in my days at Harvard Business School. Boy, what a difference did it make when I had a really strong leader who was respected by their peers. It starts, of course, with effective campaign chairs who are passionate about the organization and who are ready to devote considerable time to the campaign. The best campaign leaders are often busy people, but nevertheless, they find a way to give you significant time. The best ones have clout in the community. They make a pace-setting personal campaign gift that raises the sights of others. They are willing to help recruit the best volunteers available using their personal powers of suasion and influence to bring them on board. They are fearless about asking for gifts. And they work in close collaboration with both the head of development and the CEO of the organization. And I would submit, finally, it's very important that they have a sense of humor. Campaigns can be a long slog. We all know they have their ups and downs. And when everybody can laugh together at the difficulties, it makes a huge difference. Marty is lucky to have a fabulous campaign chair, whom she will talk about in a few minutes. Also, effective campaign committee members make a huge difference by making their own stretch gift first, by freely sharing their knowledge about prospects with development, not being shy about talking about who just sold their company or who just got divorced that you didn't know, etc. All that is very important to know. They regularly attend campaign meetings, whether they're in person or by conference call or Skype or whatever. They are willing to host or at least attend cultivation events when you ask them. They partner with staff to solicit prospective donors, and they do what they say they'll do without your having to hound them. What a gift that is. And all volunteers of your organization, whether that means your alumni board members or advisory council members or president's council members, whatever the various volunteer committees and boards you may have, all should make a campaign gift. They all need to be enthusiastic ambassadors and advocates for the campaign, understanding the case for support and able to explain it. And they all attend campaign events and help raise the flag and build the spirit. Clearly, successful campaigns need to have an adequate number of professional staff. Oftentimes when we begin work with clients, they don't. And actually getting outside counsel to hold up that mirror and play it back in a report can be a powerful way to get the resources you need. Oftentimes I find my directors of development, vice presidents for advancement know full well that they need it, but they have a tough time making the case. And when outside counsel says what they already know to their boss, to the human resources, to the board, it can help you get the resources you need, particularly a sufficient number of frontline gift officers relative to the number of prospects you need to cultivate.
Terry, let me interrupt and say that was exactly the case here at the Terry College. We knew amongst ourselves, if you will, that we did not have the staff that we needed in order to launch an ambitious campaign. And bringing in GG&A to do this internal assessment gave us the firepower, if you will, not only with our dean, but also with the central administration here at the university to really increase the numbers of our staff.
Yes, and I'm so glad you were able to do that, Marty. Your own powers of persuasion certainly helped, but when we echoed what you knew you needed, it helped, I know. A very good idea to have staff focused on annual giving leadership gifts as well. Annual giving leadership gifts are such a key part of building your major donor pipeline. So don't forget to focus on that. And in these days, especially planned giving expertise is so important. Since the recession, a lot of people don't have the disposable income that they once did, and planned giving is such a wonderful way to maximize your giving and get income for your own life and even for a beneficiary's lifetime. So that's very helpful, and don't forget about it. We're also seeing more and more intended bequest counting in campaigns, which when I got started years ago was not the case, but even CASE, the organization CASE, Council for the Advancement and Support of Education, supports that these days as long as they're documented. An adequate investment in your internal infrastructure makes a huge difference in your productivity, your CEO's productivity, your staff's productivity, volunteer productivity. Successful campaigns invest in adequate numbers of support staff to keep your frontline gift officers focused on staying on the road, tending to their prospects, not doing all kinds of internal administration that bogs them down. And, of course, fundraising productivity, the internal infrastructure indeed is sufficient staffing for prospect research, donor database management, not just maintaining the records, but generating the reports that you need, the lists that you need when you need them to plan travel, maintaining the major gift officers' prospect portfolios, generating reports that show how the prospects are being moved through the cultivation, solicitation, stewardship cycle, as well as qualification at the beginning. Gift entry and acknowledgement, clearly very important to do in a timely and thoughtful way. And donor stewardship, which is sometimes counted as internal infrastructure and attached to advancement services. Sometimes stewardship belongs to the major gift department. Either way, staying in touch with your past top donors is so important to their next gift, and they are your best prospects. Last but definitely not least, identifying a sufficient pool of prospects is critical to campaign success. You need to determine in advance how many prospects will be needed. We suggest that you test a draft campaign table of gifts in the campaign feasibility study. Get your prospects' reaction to it. Do they think it's feasible? I also find when you put these tables of gifts in front of major prospective donors, it can raise their sights. They say, wow, they're really talking about serious money here, aren't they? Yes, indeed, we are. Are people ready and willing to give the top gifts you need? Hope is not a strategy. You need to test that early on in a feasibility study to find out what they're thinking. All campaigns rest on that top group of about 5% of the donors who, in our experience, provide as much as 90% of the money. So if they're not with you, you need to find that out early on. Experience shows you will need to identify 3 to 4 times as many prospects as the number of gifts that you will need, just because people have other philanthropic priorities. The timing may not be good for them. They may have had a reversal in their financial fortunes. You know why. And do remember, it takes 18 to 24 months to cultivate a new prospect. Just because your prospect screening may have produced a brand new $1 million prospect you didn't know you had, be sure your major gift officers don't run in and make that ask. You need to engage them. You need to get to know them. You need to find out what their interests are, and then tailor your solicitation to what you know they're passionate about. And that usually takes at least 1.5 years or 2 years, if not longer. Here's a sample table of gifts. I'm sure all of you have seen these before, but Marty and I thought it might be useful to share one. This is for a $30 million campaign. It includes annual giving, which we at GG&A believe is very important to do, so your annual giving program doesn't suffer during the campaign. So annual giving, you see at the bottom, is projected to bring in a total of $5 million over the campaign period of FY 14 to 16. But at the top, you see the number of gifts needed, and in this case, multiplying by 4, the number of prospects that you need to identify, this organization needed to identify, to yield that one gift at $5 million, that gift at $3 million, et cetera, on down. And now, I will pass the baton to Marty, so she can share her experience at Terry College and tell you some about the really interesting things that have been going on there. They are on a roll.
Well, thank you, Carrie. We are on a roll. I would agree with that. It's been a little bit of a long time coming, but we are. Before I actually go into the discussion of our campaign, I'd like to first sort of quote, set the Terry College pre-campaign stage for you. I think it's important for you all to note that the University of Georgia came to the fundraising table a bit later than most, as we'd been very well supported by the state of Georgia. And in fact, when I came to Terry in 1999, this advancement office consisted of 1 development officer, 1 alumni relations officer, and 2 people in communications. In the 3 years prior to launching the quiet phase of our current campaign, we averaged raising about $6 or $7 million per year. So obviously, let's go the high end, $7 million times a 6-year campaign does not equal the $90 million goal that we have set for ourselves. So we knew it was an ambitious goal, but we also believed that we could reach it. And today I want to try to paint a picture for you of how far the Terry College has had to come in growing its staff, its infrastructure, and its donor pool to achieve almost $80 million out of our $90 million goal in the quiet phase of this campaign. So, how did we do it? One of the keys was partnering with GG&A. What's going well? As we have been talking about, we did contract with GG&A to conduct an internal review of our development and alumni relations program as we began to think about launching a campaign. They also conducted a feasibility study for us. The results of both of these played a critical role in our planning. More about those results to come later in the presentation. Our case for support clearly articulates our need for new facilities and why they're critical to meeting our needs. This case for support has been very well received by our alumni and our donors. We have an optimal site on campus. We have architectural renderings that are creating lots of excitement, and we have lots of many what we call once-in-a-lifetime naming opportunities as we'll be building facilities for the next century for this college. And our dean, as I indicated earlier, has invested his time, his energy and financial support into our staffing needs, which is key to success. As Carrie said, it's so important to have strong volunteer leadership, not only internally, but of course, not only strong leadership internally, but also externally with volunteers. And the results of the feasibility study that GG&A conducted for us were most helpful in assisting us in identifying our potential campaign volunteers. Our goal was to recruit a campaign chair who has clout in the business community and is well regarded in the state of Georgia as well as nationally. As Carrie said, we were very fortunate to secure Dan Amos, who is the chairman and CEO of AFLAC. You probably have all heard of his duck, as our chair. And when we had him in place, it was easy to recruit a 7-member cabinet, and then we have an honorary chairperson as well. And again, these are people that are highly regarded in our university and in our state. And as Carrie said, success definitely rests on the shoulders of about 5% of your donors. These cabinet members, these 8 cabinet members, have personally gifted a total of $24 million to our campaign. And they've also been instrumental in assisting us with many of our principal and leadership gifts that we've closed during the quiet phase of our campaign. So getting the right people to lead the effort is very key to success. And as we are beginning to plan for the public phase of the campaign, we analyzed our database and determined that there are 11 cities that we believe have the capacity to gift $1 million each to this campaign. So we recruited 2 co-chairs from each of these regional cities to form our national campaign committee. Each of these individuals is required to make their own gift. We're suggesting $100,000 or more prior to our public campaign launch, which will be in just a couple of weeks.
And, Marty, you must have extras in some city, because 11 times 2 is 22. So
we do have extra. We have extra in our cities, actually. So, yes, 24 people, 11 cities. So a couple of our cities have 3 people. Thank you for pointing that out. I thought it might be helpful if you actually had a visual of our campaign volunteer structure. You will see sort of in the middle the campaign cabinet, as we call them, the leadership that has been with us since the beginning of the campaign and have been so instrumental to our efforts. And then the National Campaign Committee on the bottom row. And you'll notice that one of the things we chose to do to help these National Campaign Committee members is to have a mentor for each of them that is one of the original, if you will, cabinet members. The mentors will serve to help them by attending the rollouts in their cities when possible, fielding telephone calls and questions for them, just so that they have a peer that they can contact with any questions or successes or challenges that they might be experiencing. You'll also see that in the center we have an annual giving chair. As Carrie said, it's very important that the campaign efforts don't dilute your annual giving efforts. And so we have an annual fund chair who will help us ensure that we continue to grow our annual fund throughout the life of the campaign.
Marty, we did receive a question asking if the annual giving goal should represent a best case percentage of the overall goal. You want to talk a little bit about how you set your annual giving goal, and then I'll make a comment?
The way we chose to set our annual giving goal, as I'll go into a little more later in the presentation, we have not had traditionally here an individual on our staff in the college devoted to annual giving, so our numbers were low. What we chose to do was look 5 years out and attempt to increase both our number of donors as well as and participation rates as well as our dollars by 5% each year. I'll talk a little bit more about our success in that, but that's the way we chose to look at it, given that we had not really had a dedicated effort to that within the college. Carrie?
And I just chime in here, too, to say that typically the annual giving goal is not any set percentage. There is no best practice set percentage of the total, but I do think it's very wise to make projections that predict a certain amount of growth in the annual fund that you think is feasible based on past history and what your prospect pipeline looks like, so that the annual giving program grows during the campaign, does not decline, and at the end of the campaign you're actually in better shape than you were at the beginning. And the beauty of including it is that then every donor is a stakeholder in campaign success. If they can only increase their giving from $50 to $100, they've helped to reach the campaign goal, and you can celebrate that. So it really does help a lot, I think, for the long-term health of your program. Sorry, Marty.
No, I think that was great. You're exactly right. And it's wonderful when you can include your young alumni as a part of your campaign, and annual giving is certainly the mechanism to make that happen.
Exactly.
One of the things that Carrie has talked about in her earlier is the need for professional staff, and I just cannot stress enough the importance of adequate staff, particularly as you go into a campaign environment. The internal assessment that GG&A did for us, again, gave us the ammunition, if you will, to increase our staff. We added a director of annual giving to fill that gap that we were just talking about, as well as a director of leadership and major gifts and one additional major gift officer. And these folks have really been instrumental to helping us become successful in our campaign. One area of concern for us was having a sufficient pool of prospective donors. I think that concern was certainly based on the fact that we come to the fundraising table late, we had a very small staff, and we had not had the opportunity to reach out not only to our folks in the state of Georgia, but definitely nationally. GG&A's screening of our database helped us identify new potential donors, which helped ensure we had a sufficient number as we began to really think about the public phase. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe, the screening that they did also played an integral role in determining which cities we would target with our national campaign effort. We didn't just go out and look at where we have the largest numbers of alumni. We looked at where we had the largest numbers of wealthy alumni in order to have those to be a part of our national effort. And while Terry College is blessed to have 60,000 alumni, only about 5% give back to the college. And this number is low, but that's often the case in large public universities. We believe that hiring a full-time annual giving director who is focused on creating meaningful class gifts, a meaningful class gift program, as well as targeted and personalized direct mail and email solicitations, and is working with our alumni relations staff to implement leadership annual fund visits, that this is going to result in continued success. And currently, what we have seen, to sort of go back to the initial question, our annual fund dollars have increased a little over 9% each year over the life of this campaign. So, again, it's very important that you do not let your annual fund efforts lag during a campaign time.
Marty, I should just interject, too, that of course, the University of Georgia is always running its own annual campaign. So the Terry College Business, as a unit of the overall university, just needed to raise its own annual giving profile in order to have more success.
That's right. That's exactly right. And we have done that in a number of ways. And, again, having a staff member devoted to that has certainly been key. I think also we require our major gift officers to do a dual ask. So when it's time to solicit a prospect, not only do we ask them for a campaign gift over a pledge period of 3 to 5 years, but we also include a component for the Terry College Annual Fund. And that has definitely been a big boost to our annual fund efforts. And speaking of major gifts, we currently have a pool of 633 rated, qualified major gift prospects. and each of our major gift officers carries a portfolio of about 100 prospective donors to include 15 to 20 pre-qualified suspects. And I'm, of course, very pleased to say that we closed our largest gift in the college's history in July, $10 million. That gift took many years to secure. This donor had lots of concerns regarding our new facilities, regarding the state funding portion of that, regarding a site issue that I'll talk about in a little while that we had on our building site. But as we began to get closer and closer to securing this gift with our discussions, I visited with him to just say, Donor X, this gift is given anonymously, so Donor X, I need for you to tell me exactly what it will take to close this gift, because I knew he wanted to do it. And he had a little laundry list of 6 items. And once we had those resolved, we submitted a proposal to him, and within 2 months, the gift was a reality. And the lesson learned here, I think, is always listen, be patient, but be very attentive at all times to the donor's needs, and don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah, your persistence without being a nudge, Marty, I think was very well done, and you orchestrated a lot of moves involving other people, too, whom you knew, including the dean, but others whom you knew this donor respected. So it was a major coup and gave the campaign a huge lift. And it didn't come in, as she said, right away. It just came in, 6 months ago, Marty?
It was in July, this past July.
Okay. But that was a couple of years into the quiet phase, so.
Yes, 3 years. 3 years.
3.5 years into the quiet phase.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So don't give up, as Marty says.
Don't give up. And, of course, there were key volunteers that were also instrumental in helping us move that gift forward. You've seen a generic, if you will, table of gifts. Carrie and I thought it would be interesting also for you all to see the Terry College campaign table of gifts. One of the things that we added, Carrie encouraged us to add, is the rated prospects qualified in each category as well. You'll note that we have not yet closed that $20 million gift. We need 3 prospects, but we really only have 1 that we believe is capable, along with the interest level, of making that magnitude of a gift. We did secure our $10 million gift, and so on. I will tell you that this table of gifts was very useful to us as we worked to ensure that our principal and leadership potential donors understood the level of gifts that we had to have to be successful in a $90 million campaign. As I mentioned previously, prior to this campaign, we raised about $6 or $7 million each year, which wasn't going to get us anywhere near a $90 million goal. So we just simply had to raise the sights of our donors about the giving levels to Terry.
And Marty, what was the biggest gift Terry College had received before this campaign?
$6 million.
Okay.
Now that is in one, a single gift of $6 million.
Right.
So we use this table with every donor that we visited with in the quiet phase as part of our conversation to encourage stretch gifts. And we also have naming opportunities in our new facilities, as well as for endowed faculty and academic support at every gift level on the table. And that also helped create excitement during the cultivation and solicitation of our donors.
Marty, do you want to say just a word about what a so-called qualified rated prospect is?
Yes. We have our research team, primarily at Central Development, do what we call a first look, where they go in and they will determine whether or not the prospective donor actually has the financial capability to make a major gift. In our quiet phase, we defined that as $100,000 and above, but as we go public, it's $50,000 and above. So that we knew that we were visiting with somebody that definitely had the capacity to make a gift, at least from looking at indicators on a donor on a database that had the capacity. Interest is something that, of course, we as development officers oftentimes have to gauge, but sometimes these are people that also have made multiple annual fund gifts to you, and so that is an indicator of their interest level.
Thanks. That's great. Just want to be sure everybody knows what we mean when we say qualified.
And, being a part of a large institution like the University of Georgia, we do benefit from UGA's Central Development Office, but there were a number of key places that we needed support staff in our organization. And so, as we've said earlier, GG&A's internal assessment helped us understand exactly where those are. We talked about the professional staff that we hired, but we also needed some additional support staff. So we hired a data analyst who is just terrific in helping us with prospect management, creating campaign and other reports, with prospect briefings for our dean and for myself, and just assisting in myriad ways with annual fund data needs and other things. We also increased our administrative support to give our professional staff the time that they needed to focus on travel and on closing gifts. And then another key position that we needed as we began to get very close to the public phase of the campaign was an individual to focus on campaign communications. And unfortunately, in the budget environment that we're in right now, we could not secure funding to create a new position. So we thought out of the box and restructured our existing donor relations position to lead this campaign communications effort and to liaise with our Office of Marketing and Communications. Then we, of course, needed to ensure that our donor stewardship remained at the level needed, so we provided some administrative assistance for our donor relations coordinator in order to ensure that none of those efforts fell through the cracks. As I mentioned earlier, when I came to the Terry College in 1999, we had one development professional, one person in alumni relations, but I thought it would be a good visual for you all to see what we look like today. Our staff has grown tremendously in the past 14 years, and I believe that certainly we can't contribute all of our success to adequate staffing, but I do believe that adequate staffing is certainly a big key component to the fact that we've reached 87% of our very ambitious $90 million goal.
I would agree, Marty. I think it's really quickened the pace across the staff to what they're able to accomplish.
Absolutely. And then, every campaign has its unique challenges, and we have certainly had ours. We launched the quiet phase of our campaign in July of 2008 in the midst of the recession, the beginning of the recession, I should say. I think that we were very fortunate that our donor base was energized and excited about our new facilities project, and many of those that had the capacity to make the principal gifts to really make a difference in this campaign have supported us at record levels. I will say that the bulk of the support from those key donors has come following the resolution of a site issue. We had a fraternity who had a 99-year lease with about 70 years remaining sitting in the middle of our building site. And there was much time, effort, political and financial capital invested both by our dean and our central administration as well as our volunteers in